Hey everyone, I wanted to create a video about creating a practice space for flamenco dance in your home. It's really important if you're a dancer of flamenco, if you're a dancer of other genres, if you're looking to build a routine and consistent practice, it's really important to create a space for yourself. Without that space, it's really hard to create the motivation to get into practice, to get into that routine of practicing. If you have a space that's just dedicated to flamenco, to your dance, it's a motivating factor. It inspires you to practice more, and of course, the more you practice, the better you're going to feel in your dance. So I wanted to give you a couple tips about flooring and sound and mirrors and some of the challenges around doing flamenco at home. The first thing to talk about and think about is flooring. So, flamenco being a percussive dance, it requires a wooden floor and it's loud, right? So let's talk first about the flooring, how to protect your floors, and then we're going to talk about how to reduce sound if you're living in a space where there's lots of other people. So when I put together a flamenco floor, whether it's in my home or I've done the same thing in studios, in town studios, I always want to create a cushion underneath the wooden portion of the floor to absorb shock, because flamenco is percussive and therefore there's impact. So what I've used over the years is this kind of a foam. So this foam is interlocking, so I can take these two squares apart, for example, and then put them back together just like a puzzle. This is the foam that you can find in gyms, on the floor of gyms. You'll often see it under workout equipment. And it's really, really nice for absorbing shock and for protecting floors. So what I do is I just get as many squares as I need. This is totally available online and pretty inexpensive. You interlock them, and then you can put them underneath your floor. So you can create as big or small a space as you need, as you're creating, okay? So putting these together, you interlock them. You place them over any flooring that you have, so it goes over everything. Carpet, tile, linoleum, wooden floors, cement, whatever you have. If you want more cushion, you can always double them and put 2 layers. And then over that, I put plywood, okay? This plywood is a maple plywood. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick. It's not treated, which I prefer because it gives it a really nice surface that's not slippery and not sticky either. So it's a really perfect surface. You can get a plywood that's thinner and that's cheaper. So this one runs like $50 a sheet, but you can get plywood that is like Luan, which is really thin and really cheap, like $10 a sheet. And that's totally fine too. And that's a great place to start. You can get a sheet that's a full sheet that's 8 by 4 feet, or if you need something smaller, you could totally work with a half a sheet. So 4 by 4 is also totally fine. And you can do a lot with a little. So if you have a full sheet, you can do a full choreography. If you have a half a sheet, you can still keep your steps small and practice everything, especially your footwork. It's great for that. So for flooring itself, that's what I would recommend. For protecting floors and for protecting our joints, I would use foam underneath and then simply plywood on top. You don't have to screw it into the floor. You can if you want, but you can also just leave it floating, and that's also totally fine. Now, if you live in a place where you have lots of neighbors or roommates, or you want to reduce the sound of your footwork, one of the best ways to do that is to either put the foam that's underneath also on top, so you have another layer of your foam right on top of your surface, or you can use a towel and put that down over the plywood and do your footwork right on top. You won't be able to hear your sound as well, but you can hear it enough to know what rhythm you're doing and to do what's so important, which is to do repetitions and to do your practice of footwork to get that muscle memory into your body, okay? So the most important thing is that you're practicing. And if that means practicing in a muffled way, that's better than nothing. So for example, if I do footwork on this, you can hear it enough, but it's not bothersome, right? So, for example, so it's very, very soft compared to if you're on wood without that, right? So that's a great option. The foam or a towel does the same thing more or less. Okay. The other thing is sound for music. So if you need a little bit more volume than what your device is allowing you to hear, you can grab online a Bluetooth speaker. And there's a ton of these online for all different prices, so you can find one that suits your budget. This one can charge and then be used without electricity, so you can use it outside. And of course, you can plug it in to whatever device you're using for music. And this has worked really well for me, both inside and outside. I've taught with this outside over the summer, for example. I've taught with it in my garage and it's worked, so it's been really, really useful. And again, these run everything from like 20 bucks all the way up to a lot more. So you can just choose what's right for you. The last thing is mirrors. So mirrors are not necessary. That's the first thing I would say about mirrors. You don't need them. If you want mirrors, if you want to see yourself and observe what you're doing, then I would just get a cheap full-length mirror from a hardware store. So nothing fancy. You could get several if you want to create a wall of mirrors, but you can also just get one and just use that just to kind of check yourself and be able to observe your movements. If you want to create a wall of mirrors, but you're in a space where you don't have a full wall, like one solid wall where you can hang mirrors, which is the case in this space. So this space is either walls that have windows from one end to the other, or half walls. And so in that case, what I did to create a full wall of mirrors was to hang the mirrors on pieces of plywood and then lean the pieces of plywood against the wall. And I did screw them to the wall, but they're heavy enough that I didn't even need to do that. So you don't have to put holes in your walls. So in order to mount this, I just had the plywood laying flat on the ground. I mounted my mirrors on top, and then with some help, I put them against the wall, and they lean right up against the wall there, put them together, and now I have a wall of mirrors in front of a wall that's all windows, where it would have been impossible to do that. Okay? So again, I think it's really important to create a space for your practice and for your dance, and there's lots and lots of ways to do it, and it doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to be fancy. And I think that's important, because sometimes we feel like it's impossible to do these things, but if you can just do a little bit of research online, find a local place where you can get foam, a mirror, things like that, you can set it up within an afternoon and have a nice little space where you can practice and grow as a dancer. All right, so I hope this is helpful, and happy dancing.